I think I messed up. The old kitchen was a place of shadows and dust. Moonlight painted streaks on the checkerboard floor. A single window above the sink offered a glimpse of the dark woods outside. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten meals.
A cast-iron stove squatted in the corner, cold and lifeless. Copper pots hung from a wrought-iron rack, their once gleaming surfaces now dull and tarnished. The only sound was the soft creak of the house settling around me. I shivered, pulling my thin jacket tighter. I shouldn't have come here. This place was wrong.
A low groan echoed from the hallway, followed by the distinct click of a latch. The sound reverberated through the stillness, sending a shiver down my spine. It was as if the house itself was alive, breathing and watching.
I spun around, heart pounding. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if it was charged with an unseen energy. My eyes darted around the dimly lit kitchen, searching for the source of the noise. The back door, the one I'd just come through, stood ajar. A cold draft seeped in, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. I was certain I had closed it behind me, but now it gaped open, inviting the darkness in. I'd swear I'd closed it. A sudden clatter from the far end of the kitchen made me jump. The noise was sharp and jarring, breaking the silence like a crack of thunder. My pulse quickened, and I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my temple. A drawer in the old butcher block table had slid open, revealing a jumble of rusted utensils. They lay there untouched for years, now exposed as if by some unseen hand. The sight of them, corroded and forgotten, added to the eerie atmosphere. My hand went to my throat, fingers brushing against the silver locket I wore, a gift from my grandmother. It was a small comfort, a tangible connection to the past, grounding me in the present. The locket felt warm against my skin, a stark contrast to the chill in the air. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, pressing in on me like curious eyes. They stretched and twisted, forming shapes that danced on the walls. It was as if the darkness had a life of its own, creeping closer with each passing second. I could have sworn I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of something dark and undefined. My breath caught in my throat and I turned slowly, half expecting to see a figure standing there. But there was nothing, only the oppressive silence and the weight of the shadows. The house seemed to be playing tricks on me, its old bones creaking and groaning as if whispering secrets long forgotten. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Every creak, every rustle seemed amplified, echoing in the stillness. I knew I had to move, to do something, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The sense of unease was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone.
A blast of icy air slammed against me, making me gasp. It smelled of damp earth and something faintly metallic, like old blood. I spun around, searching for the source.
The window above the sink stood open, its flimsy latch broken. Rain began to fall, spattering on the warped floorboards. Each drop seemed to echo in the heavy silence. I moved towards the window, meaning to close it, when I heard it.
Get out!
I didn't need to be told twice. The urgency in their voice was enough to send a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. I ran for the back door, my feet slipping on the damp floor. Each step felt like a battle against gravity, the slick surface threatening to send me sprawling. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My heart pounded in my chest as I twisted and pulled, desperation mounting with each futile attempt. It was stuck, jammed tight. The old wood groaned under the pressure, but it held firm, mocking my efforts. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. It was like a vice around my chest, squeezing tighter with every passing second. I rattled the handle, kicking at the base of the door, but it wouldn't give. I was trapped. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and terrified. I glanced down at my feet. The floor was a treacherous mess, a slick, glistening surface that seemed to mock my predicament. The rain had started to pool on the floor, mixing with something dark and viscous. It spread slowly, a sinister tide creeping across the tiles. Blood! My stomach churned. The realization was a cold, hard slap to the face. This wasn't just water, it was something far more sinister. This wasn't just an old house. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows deepening, as if the house itself was alive, watching me. It was a place of death, a place of secrets. The air was thick with the weight of untold stories, each one more horrifying than the last. I could feel the presence of those who had come before me, their whispers echoing in the silence, urging me to uncover the truth, to escape before it was too late. A name echoed through the darkness, clear and sharp. Elizabeth. Elizabeth. It wasn't spoken aloud, but rather imprinted on my mind, as if someone had whispered it directly into my soul.
Images flashed before my eyes. A young woman with long dark hair and sad eyes. A man, his face contorted in anger, his hand raised in a fist. A glint of metal, then darkness.
The images faded, leaving me shaken and breathless. Elizabeth. This was her story, her pain that clung to this house like cobwebs.
But who was she? And what had happened here all those years ago?
I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaky. The kitchen seemed to press in on me, the walls closing in like a coffin lid. I had to find a way out. There had to be another way out. I raced from one end of the kitchen to the other, checking windows, testing doors. But everything was locked, bolted shut. There was no escape. The room spun, the air growing thick and suffocating. I leaned against the counter, my head swimming. I was going to be sick. A cold hand closed around my wrist. I screamed, yanking my arm away. But there was no one there, nothing but the shadows and the whispers. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it now, a presence beside me, watching me with unseen eyes. It was cold and hungry, and it fed off my fear.
The air crackled with energy, the hair on my arms standing on end. A low growl echoed through the room, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once.
I sank to the floor, my back against the cold stone wall, accepting my fate. There was no fighting it. This house, this presence, it was stronger than me. The whispers surrounded me, no longer menacing, but filled with a deep, abiding sadness. It was the sadness of a life cut short, of a story left untold. I clutched the locket at my throat. My grandmother. She'd always believed in ghosts, in the stories that houses told. Maybe she was right. Maybe some stories never end.
The first rays of dawn pierced through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, painting streaks of pale light across the dusty floor. It was a sight that brought a strange sense of calm after the chaos of the night. The light seemed to chase away the remnants of darkness that had lingered, filling the room with a fragile hope. The kitchen, bathed in the soft morning light, seemed almost peaceful. The once menacing shadows had dissolved, leaving behind an eerie tranquility. The silence was profound, almost as if the house itself was taking a deep breath after a long, harrowing ordeal. The whispers had faded, the shadows retreated. The oppressive atmosphere that had weighed heavily on my shoulders was lifted. It was as if the house had been exorcised of its malevolent spirits, leaving behind only the echoes of what once was. The presence that had haunted me through the long night was gone. The air felt lighter, and the sense of dread that had permeated every corner of the room had vanished. It was a strange feeling, to be in the same place, yet feel like it was entirely different.
I slowly got to my feet, my body stiff and sore. Every muscle ached from the tension and fear that had gripped me throughout the night. I felt like I had aged years in just a few hours. The relief of survival was tempered by the exhaustion that weighed me down. The back door, the one that had been jammed shut, now stood slightly ajar. It was a small but significant change, a sign that the house was no longer holding me captive. The door, once a barrier, was now an invitation to leave the past behind. I pushed it open and stepped out into the cool morning air. I never looked back. The fresh air was a balm to my frayed nerves, a promise of a new beginning. As I walked away, I felt a sense of liberation, but also a lingering sadness for the history I was leaving behind. But I knew, deep down, that the story of Elizabeth and the haunted kitchen would stay with me forever. It was a chapter of my life that had closed, but its impact would echo in my memories. The house, with all its secrets and sorrows, had left an indelible mark on my soul. And though I was free, a part of me would always be tethered to that haunted place, where the past and present had collided in a night of terror and revelation.